Hello, everyone, and welcome to the West Side podcast. This is episode number 308, and I have the pleasure tonight of being joined by Gary Watson and Kelly Holland. And for everyone wondering why I'm hosting tonight, Joe's still overseas, and as Eddie said in the podcast last week, if we didn't win, he wouldn't be turning up. So as you can clearly hear, he's not here, so I'm hosting. So, Gary, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I actually think Eddie's on a plane to Perth, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He's not happy. That's for sure. He's not happy with the club, so he might be a little bit MIA for a while. We'll have to see. Kelly, thanks for joining us. Me and you had the fortune of watching the game at West Ashfield with the ambush. How did you find that, and how did the event go?
Yeah, no, the thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be back on a big boy episode. No, the event at West Ashfield was amazing. By the time kickoff came around, we had about 70 people in the lounge at West Ashfield, and the atmosphere was awesome. When the boys went over for those two tries, even the people at West Ashfield were impressed at how sort of loud everybody was. And yeah, massive thanks to West Ashfield for once again giving us the opportunity to host our event at the lounge, and use the amazing facilities, as well as donating four $50 gift vouchers that we were able to give away in the quiz. Which, big shout out to Joe, who took away the top prize for the quiz. So they weren't exactly easy questions, as anybody that knows that listens to Yachty's Yachty's trivia. But yeah, no, it was a great day. The only thing that would have made it better would obviously have been a win at the end.
What, not me being there? That wouldn't have improved it? Like,
Oh,
just
well, marginally.
Yeah, but yes, I was there as well. I had a great time. And when's the next ambush event for you guys?
So the next ambush event is actually out at the Beer Shed in Lumia, which will be round 6 on the Saturday, I think it is, before the Dragons game. So you can follow along on the ambush Facebook group or the Instagram page, and all the dates get added to those two places.
Yeah, I strongly recommend everyone to come along and support the ambush. Say hi to everyone, and hopefully we can celebrate a win after the game, after the next ambush event. Hopefully. So, as per tradition, I think that we'll start with one word. Gary, one word to describe the opening game of the weekend. I think we went down. What was the final score? I think it was 32 points to 12 against the Canberra Raiders up there in Canberra. What's your one word to describe the performance?
reality. I think I think we after that trial of the Dragons, everyone was worried about how we'd perform in round two. And I think we got to see it yesterday, definitely, and it really brought home reality of just where we are as a team and where we are in this rebuild as a club.
Mm. Kelly, what was your one word?
Mine is deja vu. It felt a little bit similar to a few games that we watched last year. Even though we had new players, new combinations and things, there were just things that we did that we've been doing for a while. And so, yeah, deja vu is my word for the game.
And I also got Steve's word. He's not on the pod tonight, so he couldn't make it. He said ill discipline. We conceded, I think, 13 penalties. I think that's very good, especially in that second half. I think the penalties we conceded really kind of stopped us from getting good field possession, and it put a lot of pressure on us to kind of chase the game. And then I've also got Eddie's one word. So his one sentence, I should say, was not NRL standard. He was not very happy. And I think he also said, move the team to Perth. So, take that what you will. So he's not happy. And I don't think that Joe gave me his one word, but probably something negative. And I think my one word was, just I feel like the team really kind of phased out. Like it was very patchy. Like we started off really badly, and then we put together that really good 20 minutes, but then they kind of phased out again. So yeah, lots to work on. But I thought, because it's a long season. Yeah, sorry, Gary.
I just wanted to comment on Eddie's one word, the not NRL standard club. Look, he's correct. I think for the past 10 years, as a club, we haven't been performing off the field, on the field, to the standard of the NRL. You look at our results, you look at some of the things we've heard about over the last couple of years, you have a look at our membership base. Compared to other clubs, it's not NRL standard. But we made massive changes in our club 3 months ago. For those things to turn around really quickly and go from being where we were, which was such a low. I'm not talking about on the field at the moment, but off the field, all this is going to take time to transition through. And I said a couple of weeks ago on a pod that I think we still need to be a little bit patient this year. And that was when Steve came out with his top 8 or bust kind of comment. But I do believe we still have to be a little bit patient. I still do believe this is going to be a difficult year this year. But I do believe that with the appointment of Shane Richardson and the changes that are happening at board level at the club as we speak, by the end of this month, which is next week, a strategic direction is supposed to be, a strategic document is supposed to be released. This club is turning around, but it doesn't turn around in 3 months. And yes, we've been a club that's not of an NRL standard for a long time now, but that doesn't change just because we change who's in those roles. They have to have time to fix it. And that's why what I meant by saying we need to be a little bit patient this year. And I've seen a lot of emotional responses to yesterday. I had an emotional response to yesterday as well. But it's going to take longer than that. And we all want the changes to have instant effect on the field. And there are some very concerning things that we're going to talk about on the field in this pod. But this club as a whole needs a chance to get itself right. And I believe that's what the next 6 months is really for, is getting this club moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gary. Kelly, I think we've covered these kind of seasons a few times now, unfortunately, for the Tigers. And I think it's really important to talk about the positives when they come, because sometimes it can be a few far in between moments. But what for you from the game really stood out is something positive that you took away from?
Yeah, I posted it on the Ambush group and also on Twitter over the last 24 hours that my biggest takeaway from the game is that our players that had played less than 33 games totally outshone the players who are much more experienced out on the field. So we all know that Galvin debuted on Saturday, and he just absolutely blew everybody else off the park in terms of Tigers players, in terms of his willingness in attack. He stood up in defense, which people were worried about going into the game because of his age and his size. But I think as a whole, he really had a really, really great debut game. Along with him, the players in particular that come under that sort of the reason why it's 33 and below is Fanul Pole played his 34th game yesterday. So I thought him and Lockie Galvin, Buller and Fainu were all really, really great out there on the field. But some of our older, more experienced players just left a lot to be desired, I felt.
Yeah, Gary, I think that everyone was kind of talking about Lachlan Galvin after that game. Not necessarily, obviously he had the really good involvements. He had that line break where he nearly scored a try, and then he set up Dream Buller, who was able to give that amazing flight pass to Samuel Afanu for that try. And then he also put Papali into space for the second Appy try. But I think the thing that I really took away from it wasn't necessarily the stats, but just his presence on the field. He really did seem like a Nathan Cleary type halfback where he was just calling the shots. And that's pretty incredible for an 18-year-old who, next to someone like, Bud Sullivan, who we're going to talk about, he immediately looked like he took more ownership of the team at such a young age. What did you reckon about his performance?
For me, the most impressive thing about Galvin yesterday, it wasn't that pass for Buller. It wasn't the highlight plays. For me, it was that last 15 minutes of the game where we did start to get a little bit of a roll on. Now, it may have been that Canberra had kind of pulled up stumps a bit, but I thought once Steph and Clem came back on in the last 20 minutes, that we started to play like an NRL team a little bit more. And the key part of that for me was how busy Galvin was during that time. Once we started to get a little bit of space, he was overcalling Caesar for the ball. He was the dominant playmaker during that time. And for me, that's the real highlight. This is a kid who's making his NRL debut at 18. And at the end of that game, he was the one trying to pull them back into it. He was the one who was trying to lift the players around him and drag them back into the contest, along with Api Coruscant, who was really strong as well. Those two guys working together, they were the guys fighting into the end. And for me, that's the most impressive part about his game yesterday, which I thought was a really strong game. And at times he may take the wrong options, but he's a kid who's not going to die wondering. He's a kid who's really going to have a crack. And I couldn't have been more impressed with his debut yesterday. I thought he was really strong, and I can't wait to see how he develops over the next 6 months. And it's going to be a hard 6 months. It's going to be a 6 months where we may get more games that are frustrating. We may be on the end of some big scores. But to me, he doesn't look like a guy that's going to give up.
Kelly, you flagged that a lot of the young players really impressed you. What did you think of Samuel Afainu's performance? Because I thought him and Twal coming on in that kind of like second prop rotation, I thought that really saved us. Like maybe it was because Papali and Tapine came off, and them not being on the field kind of took the pressure off us. But I thought them Twal, Pole, Fainu, as you said, were all amazing.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think when that switch happened, I think was it Fainu that came on when Seyfarth first came off, or was it Pole? I can't really remember, but I feel like Fainu. Right. I feel like both Fainu and Pole played longer minutes than they were probably expected to, because I think they both came out and it was like they were fired out of a gun. Like they were just in everything. They were running hard. They were for his first game for us as well. Samuela was just, it felt like he was everywhere, and also felt like Fonua Pole was everywhere as well. You just sort of saw them. They were carrying the ball a lot. They were really taking those tough hit-ups, and they were actually hitting the line at speed. Like sometimes I feel like that's a big difference between our forward pack and others, is that they just they start fast, but before they actually hit the line, they slow down. And it just reminds me, like, as a human being, love the guy to death, but Aaron Woods, when he played for us, would just run and sort of not actually keep the momentum hitting the line, run fast, but then as they were coming up against the defense, for some reason, slow down, and we're not
and
getting
turn around
that
and go
impact.
backwards.
Well, yes, I know. Yes, that was one of the big things that did frustrate me about Woodsy's game. But those two boys, and even Twal, his runs were the same. He was really hitting that line with a bit more speed, really starting to push the line. We did see a little bit here and there from Steph and Clem, but I just feel like, again, those younger boys just really stood them up.
But for me, that came down to a couple of things. It was the two Canberra props going off. During that first 20 minutes, we were totally being dominated in the ruck. Canberra their big forwards were getting down the field too easy, and our defense was too soft through the middle and too soft, especially on that right edge. Our first contact wasn't strong enough, and we couldn't control that ruck speed. What that resulted in is while Clem and Steph, I think I said the same thing last week. While Clem and Steph were on in that first stint, I think we had 2 sets with the ball. So 2 sets in that opening 15 to 20 minutes, it just wasn't enough for them to have any impact. And they were part of the reason for that defense as well. That defense during that time was really cost us the game in the end, I believe. But I thought when Clem and Steph came on later in the game, their impact was a lot better, especially Steph. I thought he was actually running the ball quite hard. He was hitting the line quite hard. But the second reason, it's what I've been saying, and Steve has been saying, and Declan and Joel, we've all been saying for ages. Our forward pack, while is a good meter-eating forward pack, it lacks impact. We don't have that high-intensity middle forward who can bust open the defensive line or damage the defensive line, get a quick play of the ball. Most of our guys are getting put on their back on tackle after tackle. And what that results in is, and I'm going into our negatives a little bit now, sorry, Declan, but what that results in is that our halves can't straighten the attack because the defensive line is up in their face too quick. And we end up going across field towards the corners, which I think was very evident yesterday. We kept on running our outside backs out of space, and our outside backs were extremely poor yesterday, but we didn't give them any space because we're lacking that high impact middle forward to really damage that defensive line. And that's why I think there was a little bit of improvement when Fainu came on, especially because he was hitting that line a little bit harder. But we also had the ball, so we could. Like, we didn't have the ball in that opening 20 minutes for Steph and Clem to really have any impact because all we were doing was tackling.
Kelly, I think everyone would agree that I think the most disappointing aspect of the game was probably the defensive efforts. Like, you're gonna like a team like us, we're gonna concede some tries. So that's not, that's not anything that we're not expecting. But I think that the Bud Sullivan effort, the first try as well, like where they went blindside, and the Tigers players had like a pretty good opportunity to wrap up the ball, but then Sebastian Chris just managed to offload to who was it? Their winger, like Savage, sorry, and just stuff like that, and then like off a kick as well. I think stuff like that. It was just really disappointing, wasn't it, to see?
Yeah, it was. And listening to last week's pod, speaking about the Dragons trial and how the defensive line wasn't moving up, it was staying on its line, waiting for the players to come. Listening then to the Behind the Raw podcast with John Morris, who is our defensive coach, was saying that a lot of work had been done since that time to overcome these defensive issues. And then you watch that game yesterday and it's like, well, has work really been done? Or, are you really, opposing sessions aren't always the same as game experiences and things. And I just feel that sometimes our defense is, the edge defense yesterday was really poor. Those reads from Bud Sullivan, it was like, as they said in the commentary, and it's been all over the media today, park footy style defense. You're sort of at a loss as to how to fix it when we've got a new defensive coach and we've apparently put these defensive structures in place. But I know it is still our first official game, but you would have hoped that we had seen some kind of improvement on where we sort of left off at the end of last season in terms of defense.
What do you reckon, Gary? Do you reckon Canberra, they attacked well, or we just kind of made it easy for them?
Canberra were outstanding yesterday, I thought. Their completion rate, I'm not a person that goes and looks at stats. I'm sure someone here has probably looked at it, but their completion rate was, to me, appeared really high yesterday. They pushed through the middle really well. Like, attacking wise, I don't think they're an amazing attacking team. And I thought we made, especially those defensive errors, we made it a little bit too easy for them at times. And we weren't hitting their big forwards hard enough. I thought Fainu, when he came on, really stiffened up the defense because he actually does hit quite hard. But we lacked that across the park. That's why it was such a surprise in that trial game against St. George to see how hard Olam was hitting, because we don't have anyone who hits like that outside of him in our team. And I think our defensive structures and that Bud Sullivan error was, you at least want to get run over and miss a tackle. He wasn't anywhere in sight. So those sort of things really need to be improved, because my opinion is our defense and the lack of energy in our defense and the lack of intensity in our defense in that first 20 minutes put us on the back foot, and that's where the game was lost. I thought we actually participated in the rest of the game after that quite strongly, but that lack of intensity that we saw in that defense, I thought was crucial to us walking away with a loss yesterday.
Yeah, I think defensively, I think when they look at the footage, if they do look at footage, but NRL 360 seem to think that no one from the Tigers looks at film after a game, so hopefully they do. But like when they do, I think you'll find that there's lots of like tries that they could have easily fixed with just a few more adjustments. It's only round one. I know I'm sounding like someone who's just trying to be positive for the sake of it, but like I really hope that we can fix these things, because I do think that it wasn't as bad as some people are making it out to be. Gary?
I agree with you fully, Declan. There's a couple of things I'll say about it being early in the season. One of them is the fact that we had to bye last week. I think that really hurt us. It's been 3 weeks since we played a game. All the other teams have been playing, and it's almost like you're coming into it a little bit cold. Now, I'm not sitting here to make excuses and trying to make it look better than what it was. That start to the game just wasn't good enough, and that's why we lost that game. But maybe I'll give us the benefit of the doubt that the the 2-week break between our last trial, which was poor as well, and then us starting the season kind of put us behind the 8 ball a little bit, in my opinion. But we need to fix that, and we need to fix that by Saturday. We can't come out with that lack of intensity that we saw on Saturday, next Saturday. Cronulla's going to be ripping into us from the start. We need to be prepared for that. We need to be meeting them in defence. We need to be winning that first contact in defence. We need to be putting them on their back. Those Canberra players were on their front, especially in that first 20 minutes, all day yesterday. We've got to be better. We've got to be much better in that department. Otherwise, sides are just going to roll through the middle. And when they don't roll through the middle, they're going to hit that right edge defence. Stafford Toa, who may be out for a couple of weeks, I believe, his defence yesterday wasn't good enough. Seyfarth, he's opening 20 minutes, and I don't like to isolate one player, but he was really poor in that 20 minutes. He was ill-disciplined, a couple of really poor 6 agains, and he was falling off tackles really poorly. And the reason why you'd have a guy like Seyfarth starting is because he's strong defensively and he holds up that middle. He wasn't doing that yesterday. So I can't pick him next weekend. Paul needs to be in the lock next week. He's not the type of lock that I want to move forward with. But not only does Paul need to be in the lock next week, we need to find a proper lock. We need to find a guy that can ball play, at least a little bit in that position. Because what we've got now, we have nothing to hold up the defence from sliding. The defence is sliding with us all day as we go crab across field. We need something to break that up a little bit. And a lock who can engage the line, who is a threat to run the ball, but can also then dish out to your halves who are out the back. That's really crucial to help hold up the defence. Because at the moment, we've got no space to do anything with the ball.
Kelly, I 100% agree with Gary. I think Alex Seyfarth, he was poor. I don't want to dial into it too much. And, I thought he had a great game against the Warriors, which is why I was keen for him to start. But, he only had one run for 16 meters, which, is a starting NRL player. You need more. You can't just have someone on the field.
We did only have one set. Well, he would have been off when there was only 2 sets completed. And if he did come back on, I didn't see him come back on, but I was told today he did come back on.
No, he did, in the second half. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, sorry for that, Alex. But you know what I mean. You need more. You need more impact. And if you look at the great teams like Isaiah Yeo for Penrith or Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos, these guys are just in another universe than Alex Seyfarth right now, unfortunately. And it sucks. But what do you do? But then you talk about Pole moving the lock. I actually thought that him coming on from the bench actually saved us a lot. So I'm really hesitant to move that to stop something that's fixed. But there just doesn't really seem to be a lot of good options at the moment, does there?
That's the thing. I don't want Polo playing lock. I want him in our prop rotation. But there isn't an option there. Matamua at least played lock in reserve grade yesterday. I didn't get to see the reserve grade game. I think you guys did. But I've heard mixed reports about how he went. But at least he's back in playing that role because he's the one in the club who probably has the potential to be the type of lock we're talking about. But at the moment, we can't afford the luxury of having Paul start from the bench and play in the prop rotation. There's just no other option unless you're going to put one of the halves into play in that lock position, which I would be very reluctant to do. I really don't see anyone else.
Yeah, so Kelly, just on Matamua, obviously we watched the New South Wales Cup team lose 50-12, but I'm just going to read Matamua's stats here. So he made 10 runs for 100 meters, which isn't too bad, and 19 tackles out of 19. So 100% success rate for someone whose team got bounced, and 2 tackle rates and 1 offload. So not, jumping out the stat sheet amazing. But the thing with him is that I just don't think he's ever had an opportunity in an actual NRL game. Could we be doing any worse, just to give him an opportunity to see how he goes, or do you reckon that would just be another kind of just changing the deck chairs on the Titanic?
No, he was actually who I had sort of written down with a question mark to come into the team for next week to replace Seyfarth in 13. The other option is put Twal in there, but we know he's not a ball playing lock. Gary shaking his head, no, no. The other been thrown around online is stick Bateman in there and bring Kapoa in again. Gary shaking his head.
Don't listen to Gary.
So I'm with you. I think with the right support, I think Madamu, as you said, he hasn't had a real opportunity. He had a couple of games where he may have not, there still may have been first games nerves and things like that, but he's in that position. He plays that position, and rather than, as you said, shuffling the deck chairs, bring him in, move Seyfarth out, and leave that sort of prop rotation as it is.
Well, it's really, and I think I've mentioned this a number of times before, it's really strange. This time, before the start of last season, everyone had him kind of penciled in as the lock moving forward. He played that really bad trial where he was trying to ball play, but I think he overdid it. And that he's gone that far down the pecking order so quickly after one sort of game really surprises me. I wouldn't be adverse to giving him a crack. I wouldn't be adverse to, and if you're going to pick him, you start him in that role. So don't have him coming off the bench. You pick him as your lock and you play him as your lock. And I would have liked us to be kind of training with that over the off season if that was the plan, though. I would have liked to see us setting up our attacking structures with him playing that role, with him having the option of running the ball or feeding out to your halves. But it's pretty obvious we haven't done that because he's so far down the pecking order. So it would be a big change of direction for your second game to make such a big change to your side, because if you're going to play him in that role, your whole structure is built around him playing that role. And it's a complete change in structure, like for round 3.
I don't know. I just don't think we have much to lose, to be honest, because Seyfarth wasn't great. And, I think there's a lot to be said about how, like, look at a team like Penrith. All right, we have to copy Penrith and do exactly what they have. And they have a ball playing lock in Isaiah Yeo. So we have to have that as well. And yes, obviously we all want that, but maybe we should just focus on, at the moment, just someone who just makes their tackles, can run the ball really well, and then start from there, and then look our way up to improve into that. But yeah, I'm just as Kelly said, even someone like Alex Twal, I know he can't ball play, but if he's controlling the middle, if he's wrestling well, then that's defense is really important, and we need that at the moment. That's something Alex Seyfarth wasn't really able to do, Gary.
For me, the reason why I want a ball playing lock is what I was saying earlier, is the fact that we can't hold up the defense from sliding. We can't strain the attack because we're not dominating in the middle. So our halves, if you watch our halves, they're running on an angle. They're never running straight down the field. And that just runs you guys out of space. It doesn't, when you're getting the ball out to guys like Buller, they're not getting the ball with any space. And that's the biggest issue for mine. Now, we could do it. The one play where we did it really well, and I mentioned it on a pod earlier, was the try Galvin set up for Buller in the St. George trial. We had Caesar took the ball. I think it was Sione Fainu ran the first decoy, which created the space that Caesar then gave to Galvin. We then had Sam Fainu run a very similar line that created the space for Buller, that Buller went through the hole and scored. That's how, when you watch most teams play, that's how they run their shape. They have the big men drawing attention to the defensive line and holding up that defense to create space. Now, we were at least trying to run block plays yesterday. I didn't see any, apart from that one I spoke about against St. George. We were running them yesterday, but we were running them slow, and our players were unable to straighten. But we also, those guys, those big men that you have running those decoys have to be charging onto the ball, and we don't do that as well. It's almost like at times when you watch the Tigers play, that you're watching a game of another team on half speed, because we tend to go through those things half the speed of what everyone else is kind of doing them. And I was pleased to see us attempting to run those yesterday. And that's why I do still have a little bit of hope because I can see growth from the St. George game to yesterday's game. But we need that growth to happen a lot quicker. And what that lock does for me, if he can ball play, it's another way of holding up that defensive line from sliding. At the moment, we're not holding up defensive lines from sliding, and they just let us go closer and closer to the sideline until we run our outside backs out of room. And we're just making it too easy for the opposition defenses because we're not really throwing anything at them.
Yeah, Kelly, I think Gary makes a good point about like the speed to which the team like executes their attack. Because I look at a team like the Broncos, and they've been together for a few years now. Reece Walsh, this is his second full year in the Broncos, so they've had that kind of time to like gel, and they know what the game plan is. But then you look at Penrith, who've been together for years, and I could tell you as a neutral exactly what Penrith are going to do. The opposition know exactly what Penrith are going to do, but they just executed it so flawlessly that it just works every time. And they're so clinical, but they've been together for years. You look at Parramatta as well. Like that core group of players has been together for a really long time. And I think Shane Richardson even said in some of his like intro interviews that, the teams that stick together, the attack does tend to come because they have more time to gel, and that cohesion and that kind of like instinct to what to do comes. Do you reckon that maybe there's a little bit of that at the moment with the Tigers? They just need a little bit more time just to get on the same page, or do you reckon it's kind of a fundamental issue with the attack at the moment?
No, I think you're definitely onto something there because we've got a brand new halves pairing yesterday. So, even though the second rowers and the front rowers were very similar to last year, you throw a new halves pairing in there, it totally changes combinations, totally changes the way that the team attacks. But I definitely agree. You watch so many other sides, and there's just constantly players running through holes, supporting the player with the ball, and you just don't see that with us. Like there were multiple times, I can't remember who it was, but I feel like there was a couple of different times where a player made a break yesterday, even a half break, and there was just nobody there to support them. And if there had been someone there on their shoulder, would have been able to put them straight through a gap. But we just don't play that way, and it's like we're running in peanut butter. Like we're just like moving in slow motion in comparison to some of these really top level teams that we see. Like even just the first 15 minutes of the Manly Roosters game today, it was exactly the same. Just players hitting holes, running off the shoulder, and just totally different to the way that we attack.
Yeah. Hopefully it improves. I think that we do have a new halves combination. Hopefully it gets better with time. But yeah, I think there's just something to be said about consistency, and I think hopefully we can like play like a consistent core of players, and that improves over time. But we'll have to wait and see, because you have to win games to like justify being picked every week. Gary,
one part where I do want to see changes to kind of go in the opposite direction to you is we really need Nathan Olam to come into this side. Our centers yesterday, I thought, weren't strong enough. I think they will, especially Olam. He'll strengthen up one of those edges quite a bit. He gives attacking players someone to fear in defense, and we don't have many players who do that. So I was fairly down, as most people who listen to this pod would be aware, on the Olam signing. I wasn't down on him because of the quality of player he is. I was down on the signing because I'm worried about his injuries, and the fact that he's out injured now is really, really hurting us. If we can get him on the field and fit and firing, he's going to make a massive difference to our team. And while Naden is very inconsistent and a fairly up and down player, I think we really need him in that other center spot as well. So those guys getting fit are crucial to the next couple of weeks for us. I think if we're going to take some big steps and improve our form greatly, we need those two in the side.
Yeah. Just before I move on to the Man of the Match awards, I just thought I think it warrants a little bit of discussion. Kelly, Bud Sullivan, signed from the St. George Illawarra Dragons on a 4-year deal. Like that kind of deal would suggest that like the club has like long-term plans for him. A bit strange because we signed Jerome Luai, like have Lachlan Galvin coming in, and also Latu Fanu. So not really quite sure where he is in the pecking order. He's 22 years old, so he's kind of at that age where he kind of needs to burst into being a consistent first grader. the Warriors game, he was good without being great. The Dragons game, he was, a little bit, not sided, maybe besides the last 20 minutes. But then, round two against the Raiders, I think some serious concerns about, where he fits in the team game plan. What do you reckon the coaching staff need to do to get the best out of Jayden Sullivan? And would that be at 7, or would it be off the bench or in reserve grade?
I don't want to see him with a number 7 on his back again. Just thinking yesterday about that signing and why we made that signing in the first place. I think it was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction because of where we were at with our halves at the time. I think 4 years was way too long. I think we made a good choice with signing Caesar for 12 months because we knew we needed some experience in that position, but we also knew that we had these potential young guys coming through. But then to sign somebody who's only a couple of years older than these young guys for 4 years, who hasn't had an amazing track record, just really, really confuses me. And yesterday, it just made me, shake my head and question the decision even more.
I mean, Gary, I think that he's a Mario Tartic client, and obviously Scott Fulton was at the club when he was signed. Do you reckon that this was maybe that classic example of Scott Fulton wanted one thing, Benji wanted another thing, and that Scott Fulton in this example, that's why he got the 4 years. And like, where do you reckon now that we do have Luai coming next year, where does Bud Sullivan kind of fit in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, it quite possibly could have been that kind of clash of egos that we're spoken about between Fulton and Benji. Look, I kind of understand the signing. At the time, I really understood it. I wasn't sitting here bagging it at the time. For me, if you weren't signing him, you're banking on us getting Luai, who at that point in time, I don't think any of us would have been willing to bet our club on signing Jerome Luai. So I think they went out and they made the deal to get someone who is potentially a good half. Like up until yesterday, a lot of people were quite supportive of him, of his potential. Now, he's a very inconsistent player. He couldn't lock down a spot at St. George last year, so there were those concerns there. But he is a guy who can open up defenses. But I do, and I think I've mentioned this as well over the offseason, I do think he was slightly highly rated by Tigers fans because of the game he had against us playing for St. George last season, where he really opened us up in the 20-meter zone. I do think he adds that to our side, and I do kind of understand the signing, but I don't think he's at our club next year. I think he's the odd man out. I wouldn't be picking him this weekend. I would not be including him on the bench. I think he needs to be playing halfback in reserve grade because I don't see Caesar playing every game this year either. He's right at the end of his career. This is probably, in my opinion, Aidan Caesar's last season in the NRL. I expect him to come up with a few injuries here and there. And Lockie Galvin can probably play a role at halfback after what we saw yesterday. But I don't want to be relying on that as well. I don't really want to be relying on Galvin and Fainu playing together. Now, it may work, but we still haven't seen Fainu play. Like, we've all seen highlights, and some of us have seen him play lower grade games, but we haven't seen him even in an NRL trial for the West Tigers yet. So having that as your backup plan when you've got a 32-year-old halfback is not filling me with confidence. So I want Sullivan getting as much time playing 80 minutes at halfback in reserve grade because I think there will be more games this season where he needs to be playing halfback for the NRL side. So I want him getting that repetition down in reserve grade. That's one of the key reasons why I was big on picking Galvin at 5'8" for the opening round, is because I didn't want Sullivan in that role. I want him playing that halfback role, but I want him working on it in reserve grade. We have to pick Caesar next weekend in that role, who I think when he came on yesterday, overplayed his hand and was trying to do too much, which I can't really blame him. We're at the point where the game was, if not gone, very close to being gone. And if we're going to get back into it, we needed someone to come on and spark some stuff. But I do think he overplayed his hand a little bit. And I think part of that was because he came off the bench and he was trying to show everything he can do in that small space of time. But I think we need to go with Caesar at half next week and Galvin at 5'8". I think that's our best half combination at this point in the club. And I know that's one of your topics coming up, the changes we would make, and I'm going into that a little bit. But for me, Sullivan has to be that half in reserve grade.
I mean, I think the thing for me is that like he just looks like a classic example of a confidence player. And at the moment, I don't know why, and it probably should be the opposite because it's round one, but his confidence just looks absolutely shot. Like you look at his body language down, he's not really like chatting on the field. And I really do worry because, although we can say that he won't be here next year, he's got a 4-year deal, and that might be tough for us to offload onto another club because by all reports, he's on a lot of money. So I just kind of wonder, like could he play that 14 bench spot for us? Could he come on at hooker and like galvanize the ruck with his speed? Maybe score some tries, get that confidence up. Revalue what kind of position he could play for us and that kind of dummy half utility spot. Because I just worry that if we drop into the reserve grade, then we're not going to get the response we're hoping for. Because he just seems like he's one of those guys just doesn't have that self-belief at the moment, Gary.
For me, if you're putting him into that bench hooker type role, that's a 12-month proposition anyway. Talon Da Silva's coming through at some point. I don't think that's a long-term option for him either. That's why I do believe he won't be at the club next year, because just the other options in any role that he can play, I think are far superior. And while Talon Da Silva's probably only potentially superior in that role, at some point this year, I hope to see him pushing into that bench spot. So I don't want to really block it up too much with Talon Da Silva, and if with Jayden Sullivan. But if you have a look yesterday, I think Appy played the whole 80 minutes. So I think Benji's plan is probably play Appy that whole 80 minutes.
Yep, all good points. We'll have to see. But just before we move on, we did have another debutant, Solomon Afari-Appy. Kelly, how do you reckon he went? I thought he went all right, a little bit of a mixed bag. I liked his yardage. I think he kind of kept busy, but obviously, the outside backs as a whole kind of struggled. But would you be picking him again next week if Olam isn't ready to go?
Yeah, if Olam's ready to go, he's probably going to. We need someone to replace Toa anyway, by the sounds of it. So, excuse me. I don't think he did anything that warrants him to be dropped just yet. I think especially with the fact that all of our other centres for first grade are not available until round 4. So Naden and even Josh Folletti's not available till round 4 either due to injury. So we don't really have many other options. I think next week's game is going to be just as tough for our edge defence as yesterday's game, because we know that the Sharks' outside backs are pretty large. And so they're just going to be running. If they've spotted weaknesses in those edge defence spots from yesterday's game, then they're just going to be looking at capitalising on that next week. And so yeah, I think he does deserve a second run. I don't think he did anything that, for me, especially after as well the trial performances that he put in, I think he's safe this week.
Gary, any thoughts on the debutant?
Yeah, I agree with you, Declan. I thought it was a little bit of a mixed bag. I thought he got sucked in a couple of times when Canberra went down that our left edge defence down their right side. Early in the game, they ran through a couple of big gaps because he got sucked in a little bit too much. I don't think we have an option unless both Olam and Naden are fit next weekend. If both Olam and Naden are not fit next weekend, then that centre position becomes a real worry. Like, you're at a position where you're probably putting Kapoa in there, or you're starting it with Bateman, or there's no palatable option for that centre spot if Olam's not ready to go. And I'm pretty sure his report was that he wasn't due back to round 4 as well. But I have heard rumours that he may be available next week, but who knows? So we need one of those centre options to be available next week, or I think we're in a world of trouble in that centre position. I'm not happy with anyone we can pick in that position. Maybe Declan will have to put his hand up.
Well, I'm ready.
How's your off-season been, Declan?
Oh, mate, I've dropped some kilos. I've sent the video footage to Benji Marshall of all the highlights. I haven't gotten a response back yet, but, we'll have to wait and see. But ready to go if called upon. But, I think we can close it on that game. I think we've covered pretty much everything there's to cover. Gary, do you have any updates on the man of the match, the West Tigers podcast man of the match?
Yep. So once again, we're running the Jeff Chisholm Player of the Year award, and the man of the match voting has been up on Facebook and on the forums for the last couple of days. I put it up on yesterday morning, so it's been open for voting since yesterday afternoon. I think most people will be pretty sure who's in at least the top two, and we've got Galvin who's out in front leading it at the moment, and the voting will close on Wednesday. But not far behind him is Appy Coruscant. So if you haven't voted yet, jump on the Facebook. It's on the Ambush page. It's on the podcast Facebook page. It's on various other ones. It's on the forums. Jump in, have a vote for it. We're going to be doing it all year. All votes contribute to the player that will win the Jeff Chisholm Player of the Year award at the end of the year. So get in and put your vote in.
Yeah. So, Kelly, what we like to do on the West Tigers podcast is 10 minutes before the podcast starts, we do a run sheet, and then we say, all right, this is what we're going to talk about. But then Gary just kind of talks about what he wants to anyway, and it kind of disproves the run sheet. So I was going to talk.
Do you know why though, Declan? It's because when Eddie's hosting, he tells us 30 seconds before we start what we're going to talk about. So I just get used to making it up as I go.
Okay, so we're going to talk about changes for next week, but the pretty much all been said. I think that Caesar in for Bud Sullivan, hopefully Naden and Olomen. We're not too sure if they'll fit though. Is there any other obvious changes that need to be made?
No. As you said, we've covered all of them, because we also said that Seyfarth needs to be left, right, out. So we need someone to move into that 13 spot. But I think the bench as a whole performed quite well. I was really confused about why Caesar was even on the bench, apart from the fact that we threw him in at the last sort of 20 minutes. And then listening to Benji's press conference, he sort of even admitted that there was no real plan for Caesar. It's well, why was he even on the bench? It was a little bit confusing. And I thought that particular statement may not have done Benji many favors, considering how poor Sullivan played up until the point where he was taken off and replaced. So I think, that's really all I've got written down here, is we've spoken about all of the changes. Maybe Lob, I don't know, but he didn't light the world on fire in the Knock-On Effect Cup either. I thought he had some real opportunities to defuse some bombs that he just sort of thought, I'll stick my hand in the air, whereas if he had have actually jumped, he might have actually stopped Canberra from scoring at least one try that I was sort of really paying attention to towards the end, where it was that much of a runaway. It was sort of, I wasn't really watching anymore at that point. But just thinking of the size of the Cronulla wingers, we could do with some size, but that's only if he's going to put the work in as well behind the size.
I thought both our wingers were quite poor, especially coming out of our own end yesterday. I do believe we need to make a change there. I'm not happy with how Tupu played, and I don't think Staines was much better. I would be bringing Lob in. I will say that based on the fact that I didn't get to see the reserve grade game yesterday, so I'm not sure how bad his deficiencies were in that game. But I think we need something else on the wings, and I'll be making that change as well.
Yeah. Yeah. As you guys said, State Cup wasn't great. But I think shout out to Heath Mason. I thought he was really, really good. He made a lot of tackles for fullback because there was lots of line breaks made. But I think he's just one to watch out for, because I think guys like De Silva and Lachlan Galvin are getting a lot of raps at the moment, and rightfully so. But I think Heath Mason is going to be one of those guys that kind of jumps onto people's radars this season. So just before we wrap up the podcast, there was I think it was a 2GB interview saying that Laika Gary has 2 years before it's closed to professional sport because of ONH worries, and they reckon that they need 20 to $40 million for it to get up to scratch. What's your initial reaction to this story?
My initial reaction is I thought like 2 years ago they gave us 12 months there. So to me at the time that first came up, I thought it may have been a little bit of a tactic to try and get some funding for the ground. And it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case now. I want to see both our home grounds upgraded. If we're going to continue to do a split of 6-6 at both grounds, there needs to be significant money spent on both. Now, I haven't seen or heard the 2GB interview, but there's massive issues that need to be fixed up at Leichhardt Oval, and I hope they get done. But the biggest issue for me at both those grounds is just the capacity. Like, I think Leichhardt Oval somewhere between 16 and 18,000 capacity now. That's not big enough to be hosting regular NRL games. It needs that capacity increased at least to 22, but probably to 25,000. Campbelltown, which I think is where our future should lie as a club, I think we should be focusing on getting a redevelopment done out at Campbelltown and getting something that's 25 to 30,000 out there. Then we can play most of our home games there, and a couple at Leichhardt would be my plan moving forward. What will be interesting in this area for me, though, is in the next 2 weeks, I believe, sometime, we're going to see a strategic document from the club. We're going to see what the club's plans are moving forward. This is something that's going to be publicly released so all fans can see it. Now, we've heard about the cloak and mirrors that was going on last year where we're fudging membership numbers and stuff. Our club is going to be very open and very honest about the direction that they are going. So I'm really looking forward to see kind of what the plan is in this area. I hope Leichhardt Oval can get redeveloped, and I hope Leichhardt Council can put the work in to get that over the line. But I want to know what our club's direction is. I'm not overly concerned about Leichhardt Council's direction, or I think it's not Leichhardt Council. I think it's in a something now. But I want to see what our club direction is on this, and what their plans are, not only for getting those grounds updated, but whether their plan is to continue this split of 6-6, whether they're looking at moving to a big stadium. We should have some answers around that in the next couple of weeks. It may be something where they're just going to investigate it in the next 12 months and then come up with a firm plan on it. But we need to plan these things out better than we have in the past.
I mean, Kelly, I don't know about you guys, but I just feel that every 6 months there's some talk about Leichhardt needed funding or it's about to get funding, but it's just never happened, like for decades it seems now. So I don't know, like as Gary said, like the strategic plan of the club's going to come out in the next few weeks, by all reports. Like I think Shane Richardson even said himself that the Southwest is the priority for the Tigers. Do you reckon that this could be used as a bit of an opportunity just to kind of like go farther down that Campbelltown like home base like plan? Like the club could just say, well, we're not getting the funding, like Leichhardt, it's not fit to hold professional sport anymore. We can't really do anything about it. We've tried to lobby the government, it's not happening. Like our future's in Campbelltown. Could this be like something that the club could strategically use to kind of justify moving southwest?
Yeah, it very well could go either way. It could either go that way that the club announces. So the strategic plan apparently is being presented to the board tomorrow and then will be released for public access after that. But it could go either way that, the club knew that this potentially was already coming up. So they use this as the opportunity to move more permanently down into the southwest, or also be that the club decides that no, we are locking Leichhardt in for X number of games, so therefore they go hard with the government in order to get the funding. So it could go one of two ways. But I think if there's any inkling in the strategic plan that the club's not planning on holding a minimum of 5 for this year, because we've still got Magic Round and Tamworth on the roster. But if we're not committing 100% in writing to playing Leichhardt multiple times throughout the year, who's going to put? Why would the government put that 20 to 40 million in if the Tigers aren't? If it's not in their plan? Like, I know there's some A-League games that get played there as well, but nowhere near as many. Well, I don't know actually how many games they play there, but I just feel that if there's any inkling that the Tigers are not looking at using Leichhardt as a long-term regular venue, then this gives the government the opportunity to follow through with this plan, and then we potentially could have completely wiped off the draw and all games move out to Campbelltown, which then also needs work. But I think it could definitely go one of two ways depending on what comes out of this strategic plan.
Yeah, well, Gary, hopefully, I think all these options sound better than moving the turf, which is what Eddie is advocating for. So I'm keen to hear what you have
He's
to say
over there
about it.
setting it up now, mate. He's putting in the groundwork. He's on a plane heading over there with a business model, and he's going to report back next week about our future in Perth.
Yeah, the West Coast Tigers. I don't like to say that to be Kelly.
The West finished up. Yeah, the real West Tigers. You can't get much more west than that.
No. Well, we'll have to see what his case is for that move next Wednesday. Hopefully he's available to come with the pod, Gary.
Yeah, I think he's back from Perth later.
Okay, good. So I think that's everything from us. Thank you everyone for joining us, and hopefully next week's better for us. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.